Welcome everyone to Politically High Tech with your host, Elias. I tend to like these kind of episodes, the development, because this is something I'm developing too. I'm developing too. Just because I'm a host, I don't have that all knowing hat and all that craziness. All I do is just ask questions and just guide the conversation. But most guests here, they're capable of holding the conversation on their own, which is great. It makes me spoiled. It makes me lazy. It sometimes passive as a host. But enough about me. I'm sure you're not here to hear about me, unless you have to put up with my solo episodes. Yeah, that's where you got to hear me extensively. Okay. But anyways, I have a great guest here. And I read and looked into stuff. We got Albert. If I butcher your last name, feel free to correct me on air. Bramante.
That's actually very good.
Oh,
Correct. Vermont.
good, good. All right, great. So I'm gonna have him introduce himself because I believe the guests can introduce themselves better than I ever can, and I don't want to have any unintentional misrepresentation. I can avoid intentional misrepresentation, but unintentional sometimes that's harder because you think you know them a certain way and that reveals a blind spot. I just think they can introduce themselves better than I can, so that's why I personally believe in. So with that, Albert, what do you want the listeners and the viewers to know about?
Well, thank you again, Elias, for having me on. My name is Dr. Albert Bramante. I've been a talent agent for the past 21 years. I have an office in New York City. I represent actors for film, TV, theater, commercial, and written voiceover. And I also have, a doctorate in psychology. So I've been also a psychology professor for 22 years, and I teach mainly, classes in personality, developmental psychology, child psychology. One of my areas of expertise is imposter syndrome, fear of success, fear of failure, mindset. So I wrote a book in 2024, Rise Above the Script, confronting self-doubt and mastering self-sabotage for performing artists. Now, the one thing about my book, even though it's geared towards actors and performers, it's actually applicable to anybody. Regardless of what profession you're in, because we all grapple a lot of times with self-doubt, um, imposter syndrome, and fear of success, fear of failure, all of those things that can come in to play from time to time. That's called like the being the human experience, is what I refer to it as.
Oh, that was brief, you know. This is your bragging moment right now. Just share a little more if you want. If you want. If you want.
So, I've been, I've booked a lot of clients, in the past on like, you know, TV shows like Law and Order and FBI and Blue Bloods. I've also had a couple of people, clients on Broadway and national commercials. So been doing this working with so many actors for many years that, I kind of know the actor experience, the trials and tribulations, successes and failures, and ups and downs of the artist's career, and they're relevant to almost every career to some extent, and like I said, the human experience. So that's kind of like where I've been studying. I'm a student of life, so while I have a PhD, I'm always learning. So every day, I'm always learning something new, and I like diverse viewpoints. I like talking to all types of people from all walks of life.
No, right. And you know that's great. I like you said that you are a student of life. We have, I don't know, three
Uh-huh.
PhDs, but there's always something to learn. Get me wrong, you're brilliant in those areas. Not knocking that down. But some of you PhD people, and this is I'm calling you out, for those of you who have encountered my personal life, you think you know everything. And that's when you reveal to people that
Yeah.
you're an egotistical moron. Okay, if you think you know everything. You see, he got a PhD. He's very successful. He could, to be honest, he has more reason to brag, if anything. You know, he deals with Broadway TV shows, various acting careers, and stuff that we could pin. Okay, we could just, we could catch on and say, oh, he deals that kind of stuff. Uh-huh. Oh, that's great. Yeah, so he's making sure that the actors ain't going, crazy. Okay. And for those of you who are paying attention to the audio, you know, I did the whole spin your point the finger to the side of your head when you think someone is crazy. That's what I just did. So, I think, well, you already said it for me, which I'm happy you did, that this is broad. This is not just actors and people who has to deal with a lot of public exposure, right? Has to do, it even applies to some extent to those who just sit behind the desk, more introverted
Yeah.
jobs, or being a janitor in the school. You know, you don't have to talk to people as much of those kind of jobs. or be a stock person in a retail. Well, actually, that's a little more of a gray area because customers is going to ask you questions anyways. They 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 don't know that they just want the quickest help possible, right? I'm sometimes that customer too, even though I know they're stalking. I'm not just speaking about me, but other people that has done that. So, but people who do desk jobs or computer or tech work, even though you got to communicate in teams and all that, but that's not a huge public exposure like an actor, a politician, or a newscaster. The ones that have cameras and social media, scrutinizing every single little thing they find on small blemish. Aha! When you find some dirt, you don't have that kind of exposure. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm differentiating. But the stuff you talk about, it applies to you too. Everybody deals with, self doubt, failure, even as in private, right? Failure doesn't have to be a public thing. That's ridiculous to think that. A good amount of failure is private. Believe it or not. Some is public, which is embarrassing. But failure doesn't discriminate the level of publicity that happens. It's going to happen because things just didn't work out. Just to put it simple as possible. We could get into nuances of it. That's up to this great guest here. So to open that up, I mean, what lessons can those besides actors and all that could learn from it? Because we all go through this imposter syndrome, right? Fear of success and failure. Let's put both of them out there. We got a fear of both, depending on the person. I think I have more fear of success. I've dealt with fear of failure. I think a crippling fear, but now I think I have more fear of success now, which I didn't think that was going to happen to me. I just that's ridiculous. You want to be successful? Why fear that? That's how I used to think.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of people think, when it comes to fear of success. But it all boils down to change. As human beings, comfort is the biggest addiction of them all. We're craved to be comfortable, we're craved for routine. When we're successful, whether any walk of life, when we're successful, our lives are going to change, and there's going to be more responsibilities, more obligations, which may take you away from your family and from your loved ones. Which, another thing that I often discuss is that our family and loved ones may not be the most healthiest people to be around all the time. And they're operating sometimes from their own insecurity and their own negativity that they'll put you down, or they may shoot your dreams down. The important thing is not to take that personally, as hard as it is to hear, to understand that. But it's true that coming from their own fear and their own insecurities with that. Because I've dealt with a lot of clients who would tell me that their partners, significant others, their parents are sometimes always shooting down their acting dreams. I want to reframe that as, well, yeah, that is definitely, not a very good thing to do. But at the same time, they're operating from insecurity. They may be more afraid of you leaving the nest and them, especially if they're in a relationship with you. That it has nothing to do with your dreams in a sense. It has to do with their own insecurity. So if you look at it from that perspective, it'll, I think, make it a little bit easier to kind of manage. So, a lot of times we don't want to disappoint, we don't lose the people we love. And so you juggle with that, especially when you're trying to juggle a career with a family or a career with loved ones. Change can often occur. It's uncomfortable. And that's where one way as human beings, we kind of had that set point built into us for safety and security. And sometimes being at the failure moment is safe and secure. And therefore, we're going to work, our subconscious, unconscious mind is going to work really hard to keep us there.
People, you could argue against this, but what he's saying is very profound. I'm definitely not going to argue with it. I mean, you could be a fool and just comment right there. I'm not going to delete your comment. I'm not going to call you to be canceled. I don't believe in that, but I do believe in exposing and just let you humiliate yourself. Do self-sabotage. That's why I say for politics, when I talk about the one on the other side, I said, don't let them sabotage and you take advantage. Don't try to prevent them from making a mistake. Let it be exposed. But I don't want to be too political.
Yeah.
But the points where you say, and I get it. And I, of course, you would talk to me about this when I was a teenager. I said, this Albert guy is freaking crazy. Fear of success? What are you talking about, bro? What are you saying, man? I mean, come on. But no, You see, we talk about the family dynamic. They're not going to be the most healthy people because they projected their own insecurities and fears. Instead of being supportive of your dreams, rather you succeed or fail. That's later that outcome, right? But and it's very hard. I like what you point out. It's very hard not to take it personally when it comes to a family because it's heavily emotional, especially with family and even friends to I'll say lesser degree. But family, that's like really that's volatile territory if you push the wrong buttons.
Right.
So I understand everything you say because I even got to some of those conversations when I wanted to start a podcast, for example. They would just say, "Oh, you got to be careful. You got to do this." They would give me all these. They didn't tell me no, but it was giving me all the negative reasons. They want me to land on the no. I get it. They was trying to look out for me. They was trying to be they care, but and that's the thing. I eventually arrived at conclusions that they're just speaking out of their feelings. They're projecting their insecurities, and it's hard for people not to do that because we when we get emotional, we just react right away. Just route thinking. So what are you talking about? You get defensive, right? That's sadly most people, especially when they dealing with something uncomfortable. So I like that. It is a challenge, people. And I want to emphasize this because I'm sure some of you are having this problem. A lot of you may be having this. Try not to take it personally. Just see what they're coming from and try to do you. And if you have to emotionally calm them down, and just try to do that. Don't try to see it as if they are an obstacle and an enemy. Well, they are an obstacle in the sense that they don't want you to move forward, but they're not an evil, malicious obstacle. They're coming from a good place. If you differentiate that as opposed to a coworker that was a backstab you, which is more malicious, I think you'll not take it as personal. You'll be more understanding. I'm not saying for you to give up your dreams. I would say just understand that. And he's not saying that either. I could clearly vouch for that. It's just he's explaining the nuances and the complications of that because everybody goes through. I went through it a few times. I'm sure those of you who are watching and listening is currently going through it, has went through it, or you have people are going through it. I would say is try to be supportive. You know them, you know what's their triggers, you know what's their enhancers, the more feel good. Instead of just triggers, enhancers, or stuff that just calm them down. You know them, right? So with that being said, I'm going to reframe this question a little differently since we speak like fears of failure and success. How can we reframe the view of the fear of failure and even success? You already talked about the comfort zone. That's why people are afraid of success. And you already said more obligations, more responsibility, more demands from the professional, public life, time with your family and friends is going to diminish some cases significantly. I mean, let's be real, like a Hollywood actress and actors, they say they don't have a lot of time to be with their family and friends. Multiple of them have said that. Just scroll through their interviews, whenever you got time, I normally don't encourage celebrity stuff, but it's pretty relevant here.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't care about who's sleeping with who, not that garbage, and who's taking drugs. I don't care about that garbage. Just pay attention to interviews that they're human too. They're human too. Anything else you want to add before I keep going?
Well, I want to also reframe fear of failure, in the sense that there's one thing that I've always kind of subscribed to, and again, not everyone may feel this way, but I think that there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. So anything that, even if you mess up, because most people view failure as like the end of the world. It's over for me. I'm done. I failed. But actually, no, you actually learned. You actually got some very important feedback. So if you look at failure as feedback, it's less scary and it's less daunting. That it's part of the human experience. You're going to make mistakes, and that's the important thing. Whether you're content creator, a presenter, a teacher, or salesperson, there's gonna be days where you're gonna make errors, and there's days that you're gonna make mistakes, but you're learning. And the important thing is that we're human. We can learn from our failures. We can get good feedback from that. So we can dust ourselves back up and say, okay, what did I learn from this experience? What feedback can I do now for the next time when I'm in that same situation? I can do even better now, and this makes me a better person. So if you stop looking at failure as the end of the world and more as like learning opportunities, and that, I think it makes it less scary. I mean, it's still, nobody likes to obviously to make mistakes or errors, but that's part of the human experience. You're going to do it. I was having another discussion with another podcaster, and we were saying if you take, let's say, somebody who listens to 1,000 episodes, and you listen to episode 1,000 and then go back to the first episode, it's going to be a completely different podcast. And, even if you look at, like, people like Joe Rogan, for instance, if you look at a lot of his earlier content, it's a lot different than what he is now because he's learned, he's evolved. And so if we take the previous failures and take them and reframe those learning opportunities.
I love that. And I've said this before. This is not unique, but it's valuable. It's valuable. Turn the failure into a lesson that gives you permit and give yourself permission to evolve, right? Because you're right, you're absolutely right. The biggest podcast of the world, undisputably, undeniably, Joe Rogan. Whether you love him or hate him, I did not ask that. I do not care. Just take this as a lesson, because some of you just comment on opinion. That's not what I'm asking for here. Just look at that, because I've looked at his earlier episodes. The setup was more messy. Of course, the quality was not as good. I mean, the conversations were kind of free flowing, but it was just more about hang out with the friends. I mean, it still got that, but it also has more. I mean, the guest repertoire expanded significantly. So you have scientists, actors, what have you, on his show. And to be honest, I personally like some of his later stuff better, because I think it's, even though it's Joe Rogan, he's mostly free flowing, but he's operating curiosity. I think that part has never really died out. But the earlier episodes, it seemed like it was just him hanging out with the friends, having a conversation with the friends. That's my impression and vibe with his early work. I didn't watch all his earlier stuff. I watched like about 3 of them to get a general idea. And yeah, I agree. And of course, the video quality was more granular, not as great. I mean, that's technology right there. But now everything's like, what, freaking 4K, 8K, whatever K we at now. But you get the point, listeners. So yeah, so even the great, like Joe Rogan, had to go through this process. We are all human. You are not, even AI fails. Okay. So, as much as I'm pro AI, I'm a cautious optimist of AI, but AI messes up, and I have dealt with some of that personally. Was it my prompts? I don't know. Sometimes it's just glitches, and it can't keep up with the demand. Like the whole Japanese style art thing. It was a huge demand to the point that say, oh man, I have to tell his customers to calm down with the demand. We can't keep up. I'm not giving verbatim. I'm just saying what he said, because the demand was just ridiculous. Not even the great AI source can even keep up with it. I mean, it must have been like probably 100 million requests with that kind of Japanese art. And it's a beautiful art style. I forget what it's called. It starts with a G. They call Gibi. If I'm probably butchering it, but it is a beautiful art style. I can understand why the demand of that is heavy. So that's a lesson to Sam Altman and his team. Even though successful, that you got to come up with a better infrastructure to support a super viral demand. Yeah. So
even Sam Altman admits that, it's not perfect, and then it makes, it's going to hallucinate. That's the call when a lot of times it'll make mistakes or errors, because of it could be high demand, software glitches, as you said, and even sometimes when I'm prompting, and sometimes it'll, not a lot, most of the time it's accurate, but there's times where I'm like, what are you talking about? And so I think with, like with you, I'm definitely cautiously optimistic. I always believe if you're going to put out content or do research with AI, you should always double check and always put your own voice into it, no matter how much, good the content may seem to you. You still need your own voice into it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're saying all these examples because look, even though they're successful, they're public, but they go through their challenges. And I'm not even frame all that failure. I will just say challenges that they turn it into a lesson and they apply what they need to grow, to evolve, to become better. I mean, me and my podcast, when I first did it, I didn't know what I was talking about. I just stick to the comfort stuff. I sounded even more robotic. When you hear my earlier ones, I sounded more robotic. I was nervous as heck. All right. Let me just use my own example. I'm not going to get too deep into that. And look, and sometimes it was even inconsistent. Now I'm a more consistent structure, is a more simplified structure. I try to be too ambitious and too innovative to the point that I forgot what was the core importance of a podcast. So I simplified things, and that was the feedback. Simplify. So people don't got time to go through all this. Even though I gave timestamps, I used to do a politics, tech, and development in one episode. And I gave timestamps, so people didn't like that. They didn't like going through all that. So now I just do a separate politics, tech, development. And that's been a lot more receptive. I've been seeing growth once I started simplifying it, being more consistent. They didn't want to deal with my crazy shape-shifted podcast. So, that was more, they didn't say that, but I got the idea it was that. So, that's, I have to learn lessons too, and I'm just being as authentic. I'd rather be authentic than being a perfectionist, in quotes. Okay. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. What about view of success? I think we need to frame that because you already said that it's too much pressure. How can we combat fear of success? I think that's a better way of framing that.
Well, I would say, knowing that you're deserving of it, you worked really hard, and also watch the language you use with ourselves, especially with actors. I don't like, I know there's a romanticized form of the starving artist, there's a struggling artist, or the aspiring actor, and those are words that have to, be rid of your out of your vocabulary. So I'm a professional working actor, professional podcaster. I'm this, I'm that. And when you start really embodying that, that's where you can start to grow and say, okay, I now hit these milestones comfortably, more comfortably, is watch the language you use both, when you're communicating with others and also to yourself. So communication, language you use, extremely powerful and important. Visualization. The one thing I always say, and it may sound sometimes a little fluff, but I think it's true. I think if you actually visualize, yourself succeeding, and keep putting yourself in these scenarios where you're succeeding. The brain does not know the difference between fiction and reality. Visualize yourself being successful, having that, whatever it is you're setting out to do, just visualize yourself being successful. And do that over and over again.
Absolutely. This, like I said, some of these things he say is not unique, but is valuable. Once value repeats itself, it's consistent and then it's true. Okay. I know some of you are skeptical. I'm a skeptic by nature. Okay. I need to see evidence. I need to see proof. I need to try it myself, hands on, because I've been a sucker when I was younger and I got tired of becoming a sucker. So I used to be a skeptic. Before I used to be downright cynical and not believe anything, even if it was true. Let me just throw a ridiculous example. The sky is orange. Can you convince me that sky is orange? Right? And some people will debate you to death that the sky is orange. Either they're trolling or something, not going right upstairs, okay? Whatever it is, you can see your own eyes. Check the sky is blue, right? With clouds in there, of course, it's great because the clouds are guarded from there. But you say the sky is orange. This person's dying on the hill that the sky is orange. Me personally, I don't entertain that. I say you're not in the right mind to have the conversation. I won't even say that. Just keep that in your mind. You have your internal dialogue in your head saying, this person's not right. They're having a debate. Walk away because you know what Mark Twain says when two people argue, the strangers, I'm paraphrasing it here, of course. The strangers cannot tell who's the rational one and who's the idiot. You both become idiots. That's why you don't, and to say this could apply to trolls as well. Don't entertain them. You both are going to look very foolish. Okay. Just to put it nicely. So that's what I'm going to say. I think you get the point what I'm saying here. And, just focus on what's important in the end of the day. And the reason I'm saying that, because focus what you say, visualization has worked for me. If I didn't visualize me being a podcaster, I wouldn't even bother doing this. I have done it. And you know what's funny? That vision kept annoying me. It kept popping up, popping up, popping up, popping up. Every dream I had, those podcasts, like a reminder, I think you should be a freaking podcaster. I don't know if you believe in God or not. That's not relevant. You believe it's God, Allah, Jesus, the tooth fairy, whatever you believe in, right? If you got that visualization, that subconscious telling you, do this, that is repeating, you should try it. You should try it. Not if it's just a one off random dream or something. I'm not talking about those. I know some of you are going to think I'm cooking crazy. I think you're crazier for not giving it a shot. At least give it a shot. If it doesn't work out, fine. It doesn't work out. I will shut up. It's not about me being right. It's about just give it a shot. Because if you don't like where your life is at, if it's stagnant, boring, or not great, you have to. You should try different things, but I cannot force you. It's entirely up
Yeah.
to you at the end of the day. We're adults here, right? There's no mommy and daddy or a boss telling you what to do, okay? Just make your decision. If you think I'm crazy, that's fine. There's a comment section for that. Vent your frustration, use your time, use as therapy, just to type your little anger away, or positivity, but just do that, because it's not going to affect me personally. And trust me, I've received negative and positive comments, and I know which ones to respond to. I do read them all, but I am not responding to all. I just hope you listeners and viewers are just getting this message here. Give it a shot. Just give it a shot. And this is true because more than one successful people and evidence supports this. There is, this, 20 years ago, this sounds crazy. Some of the stuff we talk about sounds crazy because we didn't think about the subconscious at this level. We are more aware of consciousness, I think, at this time, as opposed to 20 years ago. I would have been labeled as a nut. I won't be surprised if Dr. Albert would be labeled as a nut too, but today's standards, we are on to something. And thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
So now I want to talk about high self-esteem. And I know I already knew there was two types. There is, of course, healthy and toxic. I call it confident, arrogant. But that's just me.
That's a good way to call it. Yeah, that's a good way to call it.
And since I mentioned these two, how can someone differentiate?
So it all comes down to really simple, in simplest terms, humility would be the biggest difference between the two of them. Someone high self-esteem, as you were talking about earlier, is someone who's confident, but also knows that they're able to learn and change and make mistakes, and that they're capable for growth. Someone with toxic high self-esteem or arrogance it's very related. It's a distant cousin, I feel, of low self-esteem. Because I feel like with someone who's arrogant, they're not open to change, listening to feedback. And anytime that you offer them any feedback or constructive criticism, they get really defensive and really sensitive over that. They get really offended by that. And sometimes I feel even with some actors, like when I give them adjustments or the possible ways that even acting teachers who try to give them feedback, it's like, how dare you, say that about my scene? It's perfect. And there's a lot of people who are not willing to accept, constructive criticism, and they're not going to grow. And that's where I feel like it's also related to self-sabotage. And I even put like a chapter in my book on that, the way how high self-esteem is related to self-sabotage because of the arrogance and then not being willing to accept feedback and not not have the room to learn.
So willingness to learn, it seems to be one of the biggest differentiators, and of course the attitude, the reaction to it. Yeah, no, this may sound simple, but I think people just need this reminder. It's that, look, we all know it consciously, but once we get into I'm going to call it a little more spicy. Once we get to our emotional Kool-Aid mode, that blinder is turned on. That blinder is turned on and is going to stay on. It's almost jammed until you calm down, until you be sober.
Right. Yes.
So we all know it. People know this. But once we're in them, like I said, in that emotional, visceral mode, you take it as an insult. You take it as someone's cursing you out, even though they try to provide you constructive feedback. Be more open to constructive feedback. Not everyone is out to get you. I had this problem as a teenager, even as a young adult. So why is this person trying to correct me? Then I did everything good. Then I get like a 99. And what, you just criticize that 1%? Like, leave me alone. It's no big deal. I mean, I'm right factually, but this person tried to tell me something valuable and eventually bit me in the butt because let me just use me for example. My grades were not as good because I thought I had it all together. It catches up to you. It may not be at that moment, but it will catch up to you. You think you're riding high now, but just like you ride high, you could fall down. And that land is going to be rough. Okay.
It sure will be.
So, and this is why, don't get me wrong, I just jokingly act arrogant just for entertainment, but I gotta say, I'm definitely more on I would say, sober minded, willing to learn, and all that. Like me, I volunteered in the church. When I volunteered to be an usher, I was very open to feedback. And I picked up that new role really quickly because of my openness to learn. You focus on learning the role instead of just protecting me and my image, my ego, or whatever is yours, right? And I like what you said about the toxic ones. Of course, it's coming from someone with a great insecurity. They overcompensate for something. One has to act overly aggressive, overly tough, even when it's not necessary.
Right.
For example, your mother say "I love you." Now, I mean, come on, your mom just say "I love you." Do you need to act tough for that situation? No, I don't think so. Most of the time, you do.
Right.
Or a friend is just trying to say, oh, you got a stain in your you got a stain in your cheek somewhere. So you trying to trick me? You want to start somebody? You just trying to look out for you. Calm down. All right. So, and well, I never had that particular problem. I just kind of assumed they were just looking out for me. But for those of you who have,
Of course.
for those of you who have like this high ego problem, listen, and I'm going to say the harsh truth. You will be replaced. I mean, we are all replaceable, but you're speeding that up. Anything else you want to add?
Well, and not to sound, but it's the truth. But even, if you want to go even a step further with that, and this might sound a little bit doom and gloom, but even in 20, 30 years after we're gone, we're going to be, unless we did something really amazing, we're going to be forgotten, after this. It's just, through standard time. So it's not why are we stressing over stuff and why are we worried so much about that critical? Just do it. Just grow and make the best of what we can do right now.
Yeah, live life. Just do that.
Exactly.
He's a student of life. I just have to say that it's simple, profound, maybe cheesy to you critics, but it's true. It doesn't diminish the truth. And I care about the truth more than your approval critics. Okay,
Yeah.
this is not for me to please you. You could choose to listen to another podcast anytime. I just want those who are willing, to see what this podcast have to offer. Hear a little bit I gotta say. Definitely hear a lot for valuable guests, what they have to say. I like to bring people who are bringing good stuff and sometimes interesting stuff. I still bring people out of left field just to think politics differently sometimes and AI differently and definitely spirituality differently. I think spirituality, personally, I think a lot of people just got their blindfold there in tunnel vision. Oh no, this is the only way. I read the Bible, so I know everything, and I want to just stick to this. And I'm creating tunnel vision. I have my fingers covered the peripherals of my eyes. Open that up. I said, no, God has a unique message. Okay, this is for or you believe in a higher power or anything like that. Everyone's life's gonna be unique, and then right, believe in God, Jesus, Allah, or Buddha, whoever you believe in. They have a different path for everybody. So it's not
Exactly.
it's not a one size fits all. Okay, everybody gets a right cap. Everything's solved. No. Some people's gonna need extra layering. Some people, you gotta have something that fits people more individually. And I think the higher power got that answer. Rather, or if you're an atheist, you can just think I'm crazy. That's fine. That's fine with me too. I'm not gonna stop this message. I think more people need something positive. And don't worry, for the atheists, Albert is not preaching any Dr. Albert. Let me just say that because you got a PhD. Dr. Albert, is not going to have anything super holy, super religious, but he's going to have something related to the subconscious in a more practical, relatable, and accessible fashion. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't care if you believe in Vishnu, Krishna, and all that other stuff. That's irrelevant. The stuff he has, is stuff that any human being can relate to. Not for a cat or dog.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it could work on a cat and dog. Maybe we should try that. Actually, don't even take my word on that. It might be disastrous or it could be groundbreaking. Who knows? If a cat and dog start being millionaires and billionaires and living richer than human beings, who knows if they start implementing that? But I don't know. That's just me being silly. But all seriousness, it's all inclusive for at least for the human species. All right, it's inclusive for the human species. Man, you're a man, woman, even if you're trans, intersex, wherever the heck you are, this is for you. This is for you. This is the messaging.
Uh-huh.
As long as you got a soul and a conscience, you're human. This is accessible to you. Doesn't matter if you're black, Latino, biracial, whatever racial. This is for you. And let's start with the shameless plugin. Let's start that right now. Because look, go to albertbramante.com, okay? And you're gonna see all his hypnosis audio collection, and the there's like 3 featured products here, but it's also this is like audios that touches your subconscious, because a lot of our problems are rooted from the subconscious. If everything was conscious, like at that level, we would have solved at least 99% of the problems.
Yeah, and we would have been much more, advanced right at this point.
Yep. So
And there's something for everybody on that site. No matter what you know you need, there's something for everybody on there. There's over 250 different audio recordings. So,
yeah, you're bound to find something. They said, for example,
yes.
what is it? Body image. Oh, well, America is more obese than ever. So that's something we could look. That's something we're gonna need. Or even you say maybe even sports or stress. Oh, stress. There you go. Smoking, personal
Yes.
development, imposter syndrome, leadership, confidence, children's issue, business skills. And I'm sure there's a heck of a lot more. I'm just going by the front page. There's some for everyone. And these products they are very affordable.
Yes.
That's the key difference. They are very, very affordable. They like what? Correct me if I'm wrong here. I say like $20. This is not 100 or thousands of dollars here.
Right.
So these are very, very affordable. I'm sure you got $20 somewhere, or even more. These are affordable stuff. Okay. I don't want to hear that you can't afford it. You just don't want to. All right. I understand the affordability issue. I understand. I'm very empathetic with that, but not in this case here. Not in this case here, because these are affordable. If you got access to the internet, a card, or something, come on, you can spare $20. That doesn't include tax, and that's something you got to argue with the government and advocate to reduce taxes or abolish it altogether. Good luck with that, but you can afford it. You can afford it. Might be 22, 23, depending on taxes, but you got that. This is not $100 or $1,000 thing. Okay. So let's just be, this is so it's very inclusive in the fact that it's even affordable, which some businesses don't even dare want to recognize or try to adjust. But him, while I researched him, I said, "Wow, this is the most affordable." So I'm even more happy about pushing this product even harder than some of the Bibles. And this is coming from a God believing person. Because I'm a pragmatist at the end of the day, even though I believe in God, but I work with people where they're at, as opposed to giving this glorious picture and make myself seem more mystical and distant. No, you gotta be connected with the people. You work your way to get there, and whatever works for them, and make the solutions compatible too. Because not everyone has the same exact issue. They got audio for addiction. It could be porn addiction, food addiction. I'm sure whatever addiction you got. I got a food addiction, so when I start getting that, I'll go for the addiction one. And money, there's even something for money. There's just so much. There's just so much. The collection is huge. What's your book again that you want to put?
Sure. It's called Rise Above the Script: Confronting Self-Doubt and Mastering Self-Sabotage to Performing Artist. It's on Amazon, and I am available in paperback, ebook, and also audiobook.
For you environmental people who criticize all this paper waste, there's ebook, okay? Let's get the ebook. Even though Even though that's slightly environmentally damaging too, by the way, just pay attention to that. Environments, you can't win here. I understand want to take care of the earth. I don't talk to me about that when I was a teenager. I would have just cursed you out. I said, "You leave me alone. The earth will heal itself. That's not my problem." But as an adult, I'm more conscious of that. I mean, this is coming from a New Yorker that I don't throw trash in the streets. Sadly, that's a bad New York habit. I gotta call you out on that. That's not me. It's annoying to maintain that, but I'm trying not to be a hypocrite. If I know I could be a hypocrite, I avoid it. If I'm not aware of it, please call me out, even if I get a little emotional, but I will adjust. I promise. But all of seriousness, go get his book. Go get the audios. Affordable. It's affordable. I don't want to hear an excuse say you can't get it. You just don't want to get it at this point. Okay, so the financial barrier is dead. It's like a small step. It's like a little small step. You could do that. 1 foot over, 1 foot over, or wheelchair. Have someone help you lift it up. Okay, every small obstacle. Worst case scenario. Best case scenario, you just leap over it. Boom, you made it to the finish line. That was right in front of your face.
Yeah.
That's how insignificant this obstacle is. Okay, I don't want to hear it. I don't hear it. I don't hear any excuses about that. So, all right. Anything else you want to add before I wrap this up?
I just again want to thank you for having me on. Your podcast.
No, no, no. I thank you for bringing your expertise because this is something I go through. This is something so many people go through in different fashions, different issues. This is just very relevant, and forget about relevant. It's relevant. It's perfectly relevant. And forget about relevance. It's even back then, even before internet, we got these issues, and I'm sure in the future these issues are going to persist. So it's nearly timeless at this point. So you're not chasing a trend, which is good because trends come and go. They're unstable. They're great
Right.
1 minute, 1 month, 1 year. The next is just like, bruh, change. That's so old. What are you doing? Trends are that unstable. This is timeless legacy type of thing. Okay. That's all I'm going to say. So now, let's do the plug for my podcast. So this is what I'm going to say here. Give a like, share, subscribe. If you want to donate, it's $3 a month. I'll start coming up with exclusive video and content and exclusive emotes. For those of you who do that, that's entirely up to you. Of course, leave a review on Apple Podcasts as well. And be honest. I want honest reviews. I don't want the overly positive or the super negative, like the over the tops. If you see something I need to improve on, express it. I will not bite you. I cannot attack you through the screen. So just feel free to express it, okay? So if you have completed this audio or visual journey, you have a blessed day.